What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome to the first episode of Gun Guys for Black Ops 7. In this series, I'll be going gun by gun and diving deep into the stats to discover what the strengths and weaknesses are of each of the guns, and then toward the end of the video, I share a handful of recommended attachment combinations for you to try out with that gun. And in today's first episode, we're going to be taking things a little bit slower just so I can properly explain everything, and we're starting it off with the M15 Mod 0. And let's just dive right into this with our rate of fire, which is 769 rounds per minute. This is a bit on the faster side for an assault rifle. And when it comes to our damage, this time I'm displaying it with the 3 different damage drop-off ranges. So on the left is right up close and personal, in the middle is our mid-ranges, and on the right is going to be in our minimum damage range, so long ranges. And we will be looking at a dedicated range chart in just a little bit after this. But with this gun, up close it deals 21 damage to the body for a 5-shot kill. At mid-range, it's going to be a 6-shot kill. And at long range, it's also a 6-shot kill. It doesn't drop off to a 7-shot kill, which is nice to see, because at long range, it actually has a really solid time to kill relative to the other assault rifles. However, right up close and personal, where most of your gunfights will be taking place once we see the ranges here, our time to kill isn't really amazing for an assault rifle. It's actually a bit on the slower side. As for headshots, by default, we get a multiplier of 1.3, or if you use the headshot barrel, it will increase that multiplier up to 1.55. And when it comes to the number of headshots needed, just to be clear, this is the number of headshots you need to mix in with body shots in order to reduce the number of shots to kill. So up close, if you want to get a 4-shot kill rather than a 5-shot kill, 3 out of those 4 shots have to hit the head if you're not using the headshot barrel, whereas if you are using the headshot barrel, 2 of those shots need to be hitting the head. And in this case, if you do get that 4-shot kill with headshots, your new time to kill is now 234 milliseconds, which is quite fast. And that covers it for the raw power potential. Now let's move into our ranges. And as we can see here, we have a very impressive 5-shot kill range at 38 meters. And relative to all of the other assault rifles, this is the best maximum damage range by a noticeable margin. And that's really where this gun starts to excel. It might not kill as fast right up close and personal compared to the others, but at those mid-ranges from about 20 meters to 38 meters, this is where the M15 really starts to shine relative to the others. Now, another important stat to consider here is our bullet velocity, and it's worth noting Call of Duty uses a hybrid system with this. Meaning you have a hit scan range, which is based on your bullet velocity, but within that hit scan range, any change to your bullet velocity has 0 impact on the performance of your gun as far as like bullet travel time goes, because there is no travel time within that range. Now, obviously, if you increase or decrease your bullet velocity, that will increase or decrease your hit scan range. But it's just worth noting this because if you see where your hit scan range is and you know that the vast majority of your gunfights will fall within that range, then you're really not going to be seeing any notable benefit to improving your bullet velocity. And that's often going to be the case by default with the M15. Our bullet velocity is 730 meters per second, and this gives us a hit scan range at 36.5 meters. Most of your gunfights are likely to fall within this range, at least in 6v6. Obviously, if you're playing something like Warzone or even 20v20 skirmish and you're going to be taking even longer range fights, then yes, at that point, it can be really helpful to increase your bullet velocity. But for 6v6, I'd say it's just not necessary on this gun. Now after that, let's have a look at the barrels that can increase our ranges or velocity values. And with the long barrel on this gun, we get a 37% increase to our range, which is very impressive. For our velocity barrel, this gives us a 37% increase to velocity, which is unnecessary in my opinion. However, the hybrid barrel gives a nice balance of a boost to both. And if I were to choose between one of these 3 barrels, which I don't think are even necessary, but if I had to pick one, it would be the hybrid barrel in this case. And then finally for this one, we also have rapid fire in here. I just wanted to point out rapid fire will decrease your range and velocity values by 10%, but we get a boosted rate of fire up to 822 rounds per minute, which improves all of our time to kill values across the board. Now, after that, let's have a quick section on hardcore game modes, which in those modes, we have 22 HP, and that means the M15 has no one-shot kill potential to the body in hardcore against a full health enemy. In saying that though, one single headshot at any range will be a one-shot kill with or without the headshot barrel. You really don't need it for hardcore. And what this means is, well, everything is totally usable in hardcore game modes. At the end of the day, this gun just doesn't really excel in hardcore because it just can't get a one-shot kill to the body. Then let's move on to Hipfire, and with this, keep in mind the minimum spread is when you're standing and not moving or shooting your gun at all, whereas the maximum spread is the maximum amount of spread you'll experience while firing your gun. So as you continue to fire, it will continue spreading out until it reaches that maximum value. And in both of these cases, the M15 is just a little bit better than average for an assault rifle, and with its reasonably fast fire rate as well, that makes it pretty decent at hip firing relative to the others at least. Next, let's have a look at recoil. And with the M15, there really isn't that much recoil. It's a very easy recoil pattern to predict. It kicks almost straight upward, but at the beginning, there's maybe a little bit of a lean to the right, and then it curves backward toward the left. However, I'd say the most important part of this is there is a little bit more initial recoil than the rest of the recoil pattern, and therefore, when you first pull the trigger, it will jump up fairly rapidly, and that is the part that you really have to compensate for, either with attachments or just by actively controlling that recoil. But outside of that, this is a very accurate gun that's quite easy to manage. And then I also wanted to show if we're changing our damage at all, with the damage barrel or headshot barrel, this will increase our recoil by quite a bit, especially with that initial recoil. You can see there's much bigger gaps between those initial shots fired. And it's a similar story, but to a lesser extent with rapid fire. That will be increasing your experienced recoil as well. Then after that, let's have a look at our handling stats. And across the board, the M15 is basically like bang on average when it comes to handling. It's right in the middle of the other assault rifles, which means it's not bad, but also just not great. Then when it comes to our reload time, keeping in mind, I always share reload add times, which is the amount of time it takes to reload while eliminating any unnecessary animation that takes place after your gun is technically reloaded. And the way to know that it's technically reloaded is by looking at your ammo counter on the bottom right. When it shows that you have a full magazine in, your gun is technically reloaded and you can cancel any animation after that. And that's why my values will vary from what the in-game stats will state, because that shows the entire reload animation. And with the M15, our base reload time is 1.85 seconds, which again is just like bang on average for the assault rifle category. However, we have access to other magazine types, which will change our capacity as well as reload times. And here are all the values right here. Keep in mind with the flip mag, you do alternate between those two times, the 1.12 and the 1.53 seconds. Whereas the rest, those are all just quite straightforward. One thing I really like with the M15 is the first extended mag option, the 45 round mag. It actually doesn't harm our reload time at all. So that's why I really like leaning in the direction of that. And for the base M15, this just leaves us with our mobility stats. And this is yet another area where it's clear they just designed the M15 to be sort of like the baseline. This is the average. It's just right in the middle for the assault rifle category. And there we have it. That wraps it up for the base stats of the M15. However, every gun in Black Ops 7 has a unique prestige attachment that you unlock when you prestige the gun. And I'll be covering all of those in this series as well. In the case of the M15, this is the MFS 556 NATO FMJ, which is in the Fire Mod section. And with this, we've got quite a few benefits. The first thing is you have no minimap ping while firing. Even though this isn't a suppressor and you don't need to use a suppressor, it will behave just like a suppressor when it comes to minimap interaction. And I actually find that can be extra confusing for enemies because audibly, they will hear an unsuppressed gun, but if they look at their minimap, they'll see nobody's on there, so they'll often just ignore that audio. And one of the reasons I really like this attachment is it frees up your muzzle category. If you want to stay off the radar, now you can use a different attachment for a muzzle that isn't a suppressor while still gaining the benefits of a suppressor here. That's not all though. This also increases our damage range by 20%, which is an excellent boost. It also increases the amount of damage we deal to score streaks, and based on my testing, this is a roughly 25 to 30% increase to our score streak damage, which is definitely helpful. We also get increased surface penetration, which is unfortunately a very difficult thing to very accurately test in a reasonable amount of time, simply due to the fact that there are quite a few variables that come into play with this. So we will just have to take their word for that one. However, I did test the next one, which is we deal more flinch to enemy players when we shoot them. And based on my testing, this is a roughly 40% increase to the amount of flinch that you inflict on enemies. So especially against marksman rifles and sniper rifles, they're really going to feel that increased flinch when you shoot them. And that can be very helpful as well. And the only downside to using this is a 13% reduction to bullet velocity, which really isn't that bad. It will limit you a little bit at really long ranges, but these benefits are all incredible considering that fairly small downside. So I actually highly recommend using this attachment if you've got it unlocked, at least on various builds, not necessarily every build. And speaking of builds, now's the time where we can get into some excellent attachment combinations I threw together for you guys. Keep in mind with this, I do plan on putting the build codes in the description just so you can copy and paste really easily for anybody that's on PC. Or of course, you can just look at the attachments and build it for yourself, which is probably faster if you're a console player without a mouse and keyboard plugged in. And just a heads up, when it comes to any builds I share throughout this series, these are just builds that I've optimized for me and my playstyle. I've taken great care in making sure that I'm balancing the stats appropriately. I've done quite a bit of testing with them as well, and I'm quite confident in these. But at the end of the day, there might be a certain attachment that you want to swap out for something else, and I encourage you guys to do that. Also, in the case of the M15 especially, there are so many different ways you can build this gun because it's a highly versatile gun. So these are by no means the only builds that I'll ever consider using for this, but with that in mind, let's dive into my first one, which I quite like. This is my aggressive stealth build. And with this, we're just using the regular suppressor for our muzzle. For a magazine, we're using the 45 round mag because, again, you get a bigger magazine capacity and it doesn't harm our reload time at all. And since we have a reasonably fast fire rate, we do burn through those 30 round mags quite quickly, so it's just nice to have 45. I then have the hex cut grip, which helps with our ADS speed, slide to fire time, and dive to fire time, and that just helps us be very aggressive with this. We also have the Wander 3V stock, which really nicely improves our aim walking speed, so we can strafe in gunfights quite a bit more effectively. And especially with the reduced aim assist in this game, strafing has become that much more powerful. And then finally, we're topping it off with the buffer springs just to get a little bit more recoil control. And speaking of recoil control, this is what our recoil looks like. As you can see, there's definitely still some recoil, but we've toned things down a little bit. And especially with that initial recoil, I just find it slightly easier to manage and control when using the buffer springs on this. And it's more than accurate enough to handle the ranges where you should probably be keeping yourself with this particular setup, which is more like close to mid-range. So that's the first one, and I quite like it for my playstyle. I tend to be a little bit more on the aggressive side, even if I'm using an assault rifle. Next, I wanted to share my gunfighter build, and this one is really designed for peak accuracy. So with it, we're using the ELO sight. We've got the compensator on there, which helps a lot with vertical recoil, which is very helpful on this gun because of that high initial recoil. We also have the hybrid barrel on here, so it improves our range. We also have our bullet velocity barrel on here, and I'll explain why in a little bit, because I said earlier that I probably wouldn't use that one. For our underbarrel, we've got the axis shift vertical, which is going to help a lot with our horizontal recoil. For our rear grip, we're using the Caravan H2, which is the accuracy grip. This helps with first shot recoil and general vertical recoil control. We've also got the Bowen linchpin stock, which helps a lot with recoil. And then finally, we're topping it off with that prestige attachment. So this will be keeping us off the radar, even though we're not using a suppressor, and it frees us up to use a compensator, which helps a lot with that vertical recoil, which is excellent. It also improves our range, but it harms our bullet velocity, and that's where the bullet velocity barrel comes in. It's designed to compensate for that, so we still get an excellent velocity value. And this particular setup is ridiculously accurate, like probably overkill. You really don't need to lean this hard, but I just wanted to see the potential of this. And this is the potential. Is very, very accurate and more so designed for keeping yourself at mid to somewhat longer ranges. And this just leaves us with one last build I wanted to share for you guys today. And this is just my versatility build that's also taking advantage of that prestige attachment, which again frees us up to use the compensator in the muzzle department, which helps quite a bit with that initial vertical recoil. We're once again using the ELO on this just because I love the ELO sight. Even though the iron sights aren't bad, I really like using the ELO. We're once again using the velocity barrel to compensate for the velocity loss with the prestige attachments. And then finally, just topping it off with that 45 round mag. This one is quite straightforward. It keeps you off the radar. It's a lot more accurate. It's got better range, better velocity, and a higher magazine capacity. And there's really no downsides with this setup at all. And there we have it. That's finally going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the M15. And when it comes to my thoughts on this gun, it's great. It's that jack of all trades, master of none sort of gun. It's good in essentially every situation. It doesn't necessarily excel super hard in any particular situation, but it's not bad at anything in my eyes. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on the M15, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this gun in those comments down below. And if this series interests you, I do plan on going through every single gun in the game, although I'm going to be blasting through them a little bit faster. Today, I wanted to take things a bit slower so I could really properly explain all of the details. But if you guys are interested in this and you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do so, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss a single episode. If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.